So when something becomes an acid, the easy way to know that it's an acid is that it all starts with a hydrogen. So all acids begin with a hydrogen. And that's the simple way that we learned it at the beginning of the year. If it starts with a hydrogen, just name it as an acid. So if it's a hydrogen plus an element, we use the prefix hydro. The ending of the acid is ic, and then we say the word acid to note that it's an acid. So up here in the table, the prefix for the acids that are just an element with no polyatomic ion is hydro. And then the suffix for the acid is ic. So our example here is H2S. So we start with the prefix hydro. The name of the element is sulfur, so we call it sulfuric. We add that suffix, and then we say the word acid. If we have a polyatomic ion, though, it's a little bit more complicated. So the hydrogen plus the polyatomic ion that ends in ate changes the polyatomic ion to ic. There is no prefix. We don't use hydro at all. So there's no prefix here at all. We just change the ate to ic. So the example here is H2SO4. SO4 is sulfate. So we change that to sulfuric acid. The other polyatomic ions that end in ate, the per-ates, would also change to ic, but they keep their per prefix. So you could have per-sulfuric acid, which would be H2SO5. And then if we have a polyatomic ion that ends in ite, the ite changes to OUS. So for either one of these, for subtracting one oxygen or subtracting two oxygens, the ending would be OUS. So our example here is H2SO3. SO3 is sulfite, so it becomes sulfurous acid. All right, and hopefully you remember a little bit of this from first semester. So that's how we name them. To write the formulas, it's just like any other ionic compound. So we have to look at the charges to figure out what the formula will be. Hydrogen always has a charge of +1. And then we need to know the charge of the nonmetal or polyatomic ion. And then we find the ratio that makes them neutral. We balance those charges to make the formula. So I've got a few examples here that we're going to go through together. So hydrochloric acid. All acids start with hydrogen. Hydrogen always has a +1 charge. And then we know, because it has the prefix hydro, it's not a polyatomic ion. It's just chlorine. And so the hydrogens +1 and the chlorines -1 will balance each other, and we get a neutral formula by doing HCl. Chlorous acid also has a hydrogen. All acids have a hydrogen. This suffix OUS tells us that it was chlorite. So chlorite has lost one oxygen, so it's ClO2 with a -1 charge, and we end up with HClO2. Chloric acid, again, always starts with a hydrogen, and then the ic ending tells us that it was chlorate, ClO3. So then we end up with HClO3 as our acid.